Priscilla Wolf. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. In Saskatchewan this week, the Star Blanket Cree Nation made a major announcement. They released initial findings of a ground-penetrating radar search on the Fort Qu'Appelle Indian Residential School site. The search identified more than 2,000 anomalies within the former grounds of one of Canada's first residential schools. While not all the anomalies are certain to be human remains, the jawbone of a young child around the age of 5 was discovered. The jawbone is dated to be approximately 125 years old, which is soon after the Catholic-run residential school became operational in 1884. Star Blanket Cree Nation's chief, Michael Starr, says more accountability needs to be taken from those who created this atrocity.
We want to honor this young child, the remains of this young child. We want the governments to take accountability, the churches to take accountability, the police services to take accountability. That's what we want from this.
A First Nation in North Vancouver is taking jurisdiction over their education. As APTN's Tina House explains, it's a chance for the nation to reclaim how future generations are taught about who they are.
Here at the Capilano Littlest One School, culture is a big part of education and having some fun too. In December, 88% of Squamish Nation members voted yes to an education jurisdiction agreement, clearing the way for the nation to take control over their education system and creating a new education law. Squamish Nation Councillor Wilson Williams says it's time for this next step.
It's the empowerment that we are revitalizing as a people. I just really feel we're getting grounded again in regards to knowing who we are and where we come from, because that allows us to pave that path forward for the future.
The agreement signed with Canada will allow the Squamish Nation to join 4 other First Nations in BC authority over their kindergarten to grade 12 systems, including overseeing teacher certification, graduation requirements, curriculum, and approving courses. The Squamish Nation released this video on their website.
And it would actually be nice if there was an actual Squamish teacher for us to learn our language and not just,
In the public school system, I think that the teachers didn't have enough knowledge on Indigenous history and Indigenous education. So I think that there was that was where it was uncomfortable for Indigenous students. What really was eye-opening to me was I had known about residential school my whole life, and I get to grade 9 and my peers who are non-Indigenous, this is their first time learning about residential school, and that's it's really heartbreaking in a way.
On ace, T-squile, T-seats.
And back at the Capilano Littlest One School, teaching their language and encouraging them to be proud of who they are is vital to their education. And another big part is getting out onto the land and teaching the traditions passed on for generations.
We've been living in an adaptable world that our people have been forced upon since colonialism. Now we're getting back to our ways. We call our nuchneoch, our ways of life, the way our upbringing. So, that resonates not just with the Squamish Nation, but it resonates with Indigenous communities and peoples throughout Canada. And if we're leaders of this movement, to gain this control back for our people, it's empowering.
Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
The federal government is moving towards appointing an ombudsperson to oversee progress on the 231 calls for justice from the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. This comes with the naming of former Inquiry Executive Director Jennifer Rattray as a special advisor. She is supposed to make the ombudsperson's office a reality, but as Fraser Needham reports, after 4 years of waiting, murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls advocates are cautiously optimistic.
The MMIG final report was released in 2019. At a press conference Tuesday, the Crown Indigenous Relations Minister said he understands people are impatient, but Mark Miller wants to make sure an ombudsperson is appointed the right way.
I can't single-handedly and should not single-handedly in one sort of fell swoop appoint an ombudsperson without the proper consultation with survivors groups and families. I think regardless of who that person would be, they would be hamstrung from the get-go because the proper consultation had not been done.
Former Inquiry Chief Commissioner Marion Buller has been highly critical of the Trudeau government for moving too slowly on the calls to justice. But Buller worked closely with Jennifer Rattray on the inquiry and says she is the right person for the job.
Well, when I read the report about the new ministerial special representative, my first response was, well, it's, we're going to study in order to have a study, or we'll have a committee in order to have a committee. But when I saw it was Jennifer Rattray, I was very relieved because she's going to get the job done. She's a fabulous administrator, forward-looking. She'll get the work done.
The Native Women's Association of Canada has been critical of the government too, but President Carol McBride views Rattray's appointment as a fresh start.
We're hopefully be on track now, and I'm looking forward to this person being named. And yes, and I think things will progress a lot better, and we'll have someone to oversee the progress. So I'm really, really looking forward to this.
Buller says aside from appointing an ombudsperson, it will be important this person has the necessary powers to hold the government to account.
The ombudsperson and the tribunal both have to have very specific and independent powers. For example, the ombudsperson and the tribunal will have to have the ability to compel the production of documents and compel the production of witnesses. In other words, the ability to issue subpoenas, for example, and put people under oath.
And McBride says her organization will be paying close attention to what happens next.
We'll keep a very close eye on what's going on. And if I find that things are not progressing the way that they should, definitely they will hear from NWAC.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Time for a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The sentencing in the Metis Hunters murder came to a conclusion on January 6th when Anthony Bilodeau was sentenced to life without parole for 13 years. APTN's Danielle Paradis has an exclusive interview with the family.
On January 6, Anthony Bilodeau was sentenced to life with no chance of parole for 13 years in the killings of Jacob Sansom and Maurice Cardinal, after he and his father, Roger Bilodeau, chased them down a public road. Anthony shot the two men and left them for dead. Roger Bilodeau was sentenced for 10 years on 2 counts of manslaughter in August. The day of the sentence, outside the courtroom, supporters sang songs and held signs in support of the victims. The family took a day to process the trial and spoke to APTN over the weekend. The family says while the legal system worked the way it was designed, there would never be a way to restore what was taken from them.
They took away not only Maurice and Jacob, but they took away their family's joy. They took away more than just joy from us. They took away 2 people, that were loved. They were our life. They were our foundation. They were our everything.
For us, it'll never be justice. There'll never be enough. There'll never be anything that can bring those boys back. And the only justice for us would have been that Rogers stayed home that night and none of this would have happened. And that would have been the best thing for any of us, for them, for us, everybody. Everybody should have their husband's home. Everybody should have their father's home. Everybody should have their son's home.
The life sentence was a relief for the family, who had feared an acquittal.
We have a wall up. As an Indigenous person, you go into a situation knowing that you're already at a handicap in any kind of fight or any kind of situation, especially with the justice system. And so when we first started this trial, when this all began, we came in with our guard up, our walls up. We're expecting no justice at all. We were expecting an acquittal or a manslaughter or, self-defense, that kind of thing. So you've already got all of these emotions and feelings because we've lived with racism our entire lives.
It's angering to hear his wife say, oh, the best day of my life was our wedding day. So was mine. So was mine. I don't care. My husband didn't take anybody's life. My husband would never have taken somebody's life so callously and carelessly and without care. Like, they just don't care.
The family is grateful for all of the support from friends and family, as well as the Metis Nation of Alberta. They told APTN that the verdict and sentence restored the names of their innocent loved ones. They have pledged to keep up the fight for justice.
I make this promise. They do apply for parole. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to just create some, holy rain on them. I'll be like the frickin' Holy Ghost. You'll see. I'm going to come down on them.
Danielle Parody, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Police unions from across Canada continue to call for changes to the criminal justice system. This in the wake of the shooting death of an Ontario provincial police officer last month. But one criminologist says police criticisms and suggestions for improving the system are not evidence-based. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Last month, OPP officer Greg Pershala was shot and killed while conducting a roadside check in southern Ontario. Randall McKenzie of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation is one of two people charged with first-degree murder in his death. 4 police unions say officer safety is at an unprecedented risk.
In the past 4 months, we've had 5 officers killed, which I call unprecedented over my 27 years, having different incidents where officers have been pretty much ambushed and murdered. That doesn't happen. Yes, have we had 5 officers killed at one time? That's happened, but not a series of events and incidents that have led to this.
However, University of Ottawa criminologist Justin Pichet says data shows policing deaths compared to population numbers have been on the decline since the 1960s. And he says the way police have chosen to wade into the issue has been disturbing.
Who are using the opportunity as police officers, who are supposed to be politically neutral and stick to enforcing the law, not making them, to hear them call for more imprisonment, which vast reams of criminological research has shown to be the most costly and least effective way of enhancing safety in our communities, I think is deeply troubling.
McKenzie was out on bail while facing charges of assault and weapons-related offenses, so police are saying Canada's bail system is in need of tightening.
We need to look at bail conditions, how we treat bail violations on the go forward. I think we need to really take a look. Some people are saying it's broken. I'm just saying it's not working. It's not working for what we need it to do. Because if police officers aren't safe, that leaves the community at risk as well.
But again, Pichet says the facts don't bear this out.
In Ontario right now, we know thanks to a coroner's inquest into deaths at the Lindsay Super Jail this past summer, that the people who are awaiting trial behind bars are over 75% of the people who are there, with 25% of people serving sentences of 2 years minus a day. That doesn't strike me as evidence of a bail system that's lenient.
The police unions say they plan to do a thorough review of Canada's justice system in the coming months in hopes of making suggestions that will make both officers and the public safer. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Earlier this week in Digby Provincial Court, charges against 3 Mi'kmaq fishermen were dismissed. It's a win for the Mi'kmaq Territory Treaty Fishery. Angel Moore explains.
Mike McDonald, the defense lawyer in the case, was happy with the dismissal, saying that the fact that the federal government has not made any changes to the Fisheries Act to include a 1999 Supreme Court decision on moderate livelihood meant that provincial judge Tim Landry had no choice but to dismiss the charges.
So basically he dismissed the case because my clients did not break any laws. There's no laws for them to break. There's no laws that deal specifically with livelihood fishing. So you cannot be charged for something that if there's no law there in place in the first place. So
the case has been ongoing for 4 years. Logan Pierre Howe, James Wallace Nevin, and Leon Knockwood of the Sabaganagati First Nation were harvesting lobster under their band's moderate livelihood fishery when they were charged for violating the Fisheries Act. Judge Landry said in court that the Crown did not prove that fishing for ceremonial purposes is the only authorized use of the fishery. McDonald says it is still a win for the Mi'kmaq.
You cannot charge someone for fishing, livelihood fishing, because there's nothing there. There's no guidance for DFO, and that falls on Parliament. So everything that they did was outside the law. Everything that DFO did was outside the law. It was an infringement of our First Nations rights, our rights to a moderate livelihood.
McDonald is bringing action against the Department of Fisheries and the federal government, including negligence, racial profiling, and infringement of treaty rights. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Chibuktuk, known as Halifax.
Time for another break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Arctic Winter Games begin on January 29th in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and this week began the first day of the torch relay. The torch will be taken from Fort Chipewyan and visit 8 communities on their way to Fort McMurray to open the games. Teams from Alberta, the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Yukon, and Nunavik, and Quebec will compete with Alaska, Greenland, Norway, Sweden, and Finland in dozens of indoor and outdoor sports, and APTN will be there to cover it. Alicia Gladue is 17 and representing Alberta North. She says she is looking forward to the upcoming games.
I think it's really cool, and it's a cool experience, and I hope to inspire some people, and especially my community, since I'm the only member playing. So it means a lot, and it's kind of cool to experience this and meet new people.
Ganawagi burlesque artist Lulu La Duchesriere was voted the second most influential burlesque performer in the world. She's been a staple of the Montreal burlesque scene for over a decade and is now a mentor to up-and-coming BIPOC performers. Amelia Fournier has more.
Burlesque is often called the art of slowly taking your clothes off, but it's much more than that, says Ganawagi burlesque dancer Lulu La Duchesse de Rière.
It can be really easy to say, well, this is very demeaning, or it's sexualizing yourself, or I think burlesque is very empowering. It's always been a really awesome means of expression for myself and for other people. And I think it's the complete opposite.
She is the stripping sensation from the Mohawk Nation.
Lulu, or Lauren Giles, was voted the second most influential burlesque figure of 2022 in the world in 21st Century Burlesque magazine.
To be voted by my community members as an influential figure is also very, very surreal and really cool. So I feel like it's a very fruitful, amazing year, like a reaffirming year as an artist, and it just made me feel like I've been doing the right thing and that I've been on this right track.
In June 2022, she competed in the world's biggest burlesque competition, the Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender in Las Vegas. her piece won despite it being unconventional.
It is really a piece that is centered around this idea of like decolonizing sexuality and like reclaiming my body as like an Indigenous woman. It's very, a lot of the dance is like very violent, or has like violent kind of imagery. It's very like sexual, it's like really political, and I was really surprised when they're like, we want this to compete. We do not want to have to repair any of the beadwork on it. It took hundreds of hours. And when I won, I was just like, I can't believe that like it's the whole world like recognizing this piece as like the best in the week. And I was like, it meant a lot to me. And then to have conversations that week with other Indigenous performers that were there during the week and to see how much that piece resonated with them adds a whole nother level to it.
Last year's Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender featured a land acknowledgement for the first time, something Giles helped work on. She and the other Indigenous artists added a call out for donations for different community organizations.
It's not just about saying like, this is the territory that we're on. It's about like maybe reaching out to institutions or organizations that are in our territories and seeing how we can make like legitimate connections with the Indigenous people that still occupy the land and give back.
Burlesque has come a long way from its racially insensitive past, says Giles.
Resurgence of burlesque in the like late 90s, early 2000s, it was definitely like chasing that 1950s, 1960s retro aesthetic. And unfortunately, you'd have things like tiki shows and geisha acts and like Pocahontas princess type acts.
Giles will be producing the 2023 edition of the Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender competition and won't be competing anymore, to focus on mentoring and producing.
Kind of like entering my NT stage in the community. And it was just fun because I'm so young. You know, I'm too young, much too young to be a mother.
But she won't stop performing anytime soon. Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
A Métis artist from Saskatchewan was given a rare opportunity to gift one of her creations to a major Hollywood actor. Beater and designer Christine Tournier Teenkamp was asked by friends to create a special medallion for Jason Momoa. Those same friends were responding to a casting call for the TV series C in Toronto, which stars Momoa, who has native Hawaiian ancestry. For the design, Tournier Teenkamp incorporated elements of Indigenous culture, like an eagle, as well as Hawaiian flower. She's also the owner of a fashion company, SS River Designs, and included a note about her work with the medallion.
They said he opened the gift with them there and read the note inside about the beadwork, and then offered to take some pictures with them. So it sounds like he was really gracious about it and very kind about receiving the gift.
That's your weekend newscast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priscilla Wolf.